I'm not going to stop the wheel. I'm going to break the wheel.
Season 2 of Amazon's Wheel of Time. Wait, Wheel of Prime? Wheel of Crime? Wheel of this looks like it was made for a dime because this clearly isn't Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time. Hits the ground running. And by running, I mean running away from the source material. It starts with the Dark Friend social scene from the prologue of The Great Hunt, but the show can't even get that right. I mean, it's not like we don't have anything out there to copy. But in typical fashion, the showrunners handle the scene like it's a great train robbery and they don't know if audiences can figure things out without being told explicitly what's going on. And if that wasn't bad enough, the scene ends with Ishamael still being played off as the Dark One despite Amazon spoiling their own mystery box, being a creepy groomer with a Tinker Girl and telling us that Trolloc lives matter even though they're the epitome of mindless evil and literally eat people. But hey, I wouldn't expect a bunch of Hollywood creeps to understand objective morality. When you end up being handed a show with a budget of hundreds of millions of dollars and your resume is as short as Danny DeVito, I'd imagine you'd have some problems telling the differences between good and evil too. Anyway, we're back with the protagonist of the show, Moiraine, who has apparently been stilled or shielded or cut off from the One Power after that non-fight with Ishamael from episode 8 of season 1. Despite Lan continuing as simping for her, she masochistically insists on doing everything herself and being a bitch to everyone around her because she's mad at her own failure. And we spend way too much time recreating the horrible bath scene from season 1, only this time she's crying because she can't use her power. Lan gets another shirtless training moment clearly made for the female gaze, and we get the first of many really uncomfortable and awkward exchanges of sexual innuendo between Lan, Perrin, and Adelius. If you've read the entire series, introducing Perrin here is going to be rather problematic, but I'm confident that this show won't ruin any plot points from the book because the writers of the show either didn't read it or don't care about the source material, but I digress. Bail Doman makes an appearance minus his highly amusing Illiner banter or mentions of his aged grandmother, trying to sell Moiraine a piece of what I'm presuming is a seal of the Dark One's prison in a scrap of poetry that he found with it. How or where he found these things and what their significance is, we'll never know, but I'm going to give the show some credit for remembering what that seal looked like from season 1. Continuity is something the show struggles with, and the rock Doman has is almost the same color as it was in season 1. Meanwhile, back in the White Tower, Novice Egwene is doing chores with all the attitude of Colin Kaepernick insisting that the NFL is literally slavery. She's got a bucket filled with food scraps, bodily fluids, and God knows what else that's clearly important for later because it's featured in every single shot. Oh, but before I get back to the bucket, we see an amorous Alana gladly fucking both of her warders in yet another awkward sex scene, making it clear that this is shit tier fanfiction. And before we go any further, I just want to remind you of what Robert Jordan thought of people writing erotic fanfiction based on his work.
I've found some very raunchy and very badly written of examples of that, and I don't like it a bit. If you want to write erotica, fine. I like reading erotica, sometimes, but if you write erotica using my characters and post it, I will find you, and I will come down on you like the hammer of God.
Back to the bucket. Now that Alana's got her rocks off, she's ready to teach some novices whose knowledge of esoteric arts is right up there with Gen Z witches on TikTok, despite having been in the tower for 5 months. Oh yes, here's where we learn there's been a time jump. Egwene and Nynaeve have been in the tower for 5 months. Later we'll learn it's been a year since Winter's Night, so what happened to those 7 other months we'll never know. Probably ended up in Egwene's bucket along with Alana's bodily fluids. Did I mention the bucket? In another stunning lore break, Alana tells the girls that they need to filter the water in the bucket using leaves of the One Power taken from the stones of the White Tower. I am honestly amazed at the engineering of the structure. How it's lasted thousands of years around these women is honestly baffling when they're weakening the structure every day. It's almost as baffling as the writers retroactively giving Nynaeve her block back. Girl can't channel. Even Alana's Georgia O'Keeffe references and sexual harassment will bring out her power. And we all know she's stubborn, so when she can't filter her water, she chooses to drink it instead. Rip Queen! We're almost halfway through this episode and we finally get a mention of one of our main characters. Shockingly, Perrin is literate and dumps a bunch of exposition into a letter he sends to Egwene and Matt. He's with loyal Uno Ingtar and a bunch of Shienarans who are inexplicitly alive after the season 1 finale. I'll assume Super Saiyan Nynaeve brought them all back to life. Book readers will fill in the blanks with plotlines from The Great Hunt, but where they're going and why they left Eldara, we'll never know. We finally meet Elias, who should be Perrin's mentor, but instead comes out as a group sniffer. What he's sniffing and why, we don't know. But lie back and let it happen. They will come across some dead tinkers, and in yet another stunning piece of continuity success, we see the girl from the Dark Friend Social survived, and some Shinorans in the same clothes from the opening did not. Clearly, for book readers, this is some kind of red herring to steer us away from realizing Ingtar is a Dark Friend, but I don't expect that level of competency from writers with the memory capacity of a goldfish. Meanwhile, back to the tower, Nynaeve is fighting Alana's warders instead of trying to break through her block, and there is yet again more awkward sexual banter. If this is what's replacing Matt's fight with Galad and Egwene, I want this hour of my life back. Egwene goes to Alana to help with her channeling, and Alana gives her a lecture on the joys of double penetration. Yes, I am being serious. This is a thing that actually happened. Clearly, she's a tower's Harvey Weinstein, though nobody seems to think that this is a problem, so I'm sure as soon as Egwene stops being a prude and discovers the joy of meaningless sex and polyamory, everything will be fine. Oh wait, I forgot she was banging Rand like a screen door in season 1 on the table of the Winespring Inn. Meanwhile, back in the kitchen, which I'm pretty sure is a redress set from the Amberlin's chamber, Liandrin corners Nynaeve with a sword woven from air in an attempt to get her to channel. If she was anything like Book Liandrin, we'd like to think that this was some part of her evil plans, but no, she just really wants to help her. Liandrin's character motivations here are about as straight as the people who made this show. But back to the boys. The show excels at copying things that other bad shows have done and doing them worse, so as Perrin struggles with following the way of the leaf, he discovers that there's a tempest in him, just like our girl Guy Ladriel from Rings of Power. Somehow, the letter he sent makes it to Egwene and Nynaeve in the White Tower, and we get a very jilted exposition dump. Apparently, the Emmons Field Five are all best friends forever, and we learned it's been a year since Winter Night, and Rand is dead, and yet again, I'm wondering, where did all those lost months go? Clearly, we shouldn't expect such complex mathematical calculations from people who can't decide if there's 4 or 5 Taviran in Emmons Field. Somehow, Liandrin gets a hold of the girl's letter and reads it to our boy Meth Coffin, who has all the charisma of Hunter Biden reclining in a bathtub with his crack pipe. Meth has gone from running away from his friends in season 1 to being imprisoned by the Red Aja because nobody can figure out who the Dragon Reborn is supposed to be. That and Moiraine threatened to sick those raging feminists on him in season 1, so good on her for squaring through with something for once. Speaking of the dragon, we get approximately 18 seconds of contractually obligated footage of Rand wandering around on the set of some 1960s kung fu movie, minus the action and the hot chicks. Clearly he's alive, so there's one mystery box thrown into the recycling bin. Back to the hero of our show. Despite not knowing what's in the poem Moiraine bought from Vale Doman, she decides she needs to take it back to the White Tower and runs away in the night. What follows is a hilarious fight with 3 Fades in which she kills one with her little dagger, gets stabbed, and Lan steps in with some comical wire work. What would the show be without a fake out? For a minute, we think Moiraine might be able to channel, but silly us, it's just Perrin come to save the day. We end the episode with Lan and Moiraine bitching at each other as they bleed from wounds that would kill mere mortals, but don't worry, their plot armor will save them. And that's an hour of my life I won't get back. See you next time for a view of episode 2, and remember, walk in the light.